This debate disgraces the fallen, and Israel will not take part in it.
Let's take a look back into the history of Palestine. Palestine, a land ruled by the Ottoman Empire in the 1800s, was later colonized by England after World War I. The Arab-Israeli War of 1948 began when 5 Arab nations invaded territory in the former Palestinian Mandate after Israel declared its independence. The United Nations General Assembly adopted a partition resolution in November 1947 to divide Great Britain's former Palestinian Mandate into Jewish and Arab states. The Palestinian Arab refused to recognize this arrangement, deeming it unfair to the Arab population. The United States supported the resolution and encouraged negotiation between Arabs and Jews in the Middle East. Fighting intensified after Israel declared its independence, with Arab forces joining Palestinian Arabs in attacking territory. Arab armies from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Egypt invaded the former Palestinian Mandate, with Saudi Arabia sending a formation fort under Egyptian command. British trained forces from Transjordan intervened in the conflict, but only in areas designated as part of the Arab state under the United Nations Partition Plan and the Corpus Separatum of Jerusalem. Despite the United Nations broke to ceasefire, fighting continued into 1949, and Israel and the Arab states did not reach any formal armistice agreements until February. Israel gained some territory formally granted to Palestinian Arabs under the United Nations resolution in 1947, while Egypt and Jordan retained control over the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So what did United Nations do for Palestine? The United Nations has been involved in addressing the Israel-Palestinian conflict, including issues related to the rights and status of the Palestinian people. Number 1. Partition Plan 1947. The United Nations played a role in the partition of British Mandate Palestine in 1947, recommending the creation of separate Jewish and Arab states and international administration for Jerusalem. However, the Arab states rejected this plan, leading to ongoing tensions and conflict. Number 2. United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East was established in 1949 to provide assistance and support to Palestinian refugees who were displaced during the Arab-Israeli conflict in 1948 until 1949. It offers education, healthcare, and social service to Palestinian refugees in the region. Number 3. General Assembly Resolution. The United Nations General Assembly has passed numerous resolutions over the year addressing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. These resolutions have covered issues such as the status of Jerusalem, the right of Palestinian refugees, and the establishment of a Palestinian state. Number 4. The United Nations Security Council has issued resolution related to the Israel-Palestinian conflict, including call for ceasefire, negotiation, and the establishment of two-state solutions. However, the implementation of this resolution has often been challenging due to the geopolitical complexity and regional tensions. Number 5. International Criminal Court. In 2015, Palestine joined the ICC, allowing it to bring cases against individuals for alleged war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. The ICC has investigated the situation in Palestine, including allegations against both Israeli and Palestinian actors. Number 6. Peacekeeping Operation. The United Nations has deployed peacekeeping force to the region, such as the United Nations Truth Supervision Organization or UNTSO and the United Nations Disengagement Observer Force UNDOF to monitor and maintain ceasefire and peace agreement. And the last one, diplomatic efforts. The United Nations has facilitated diplomatic initiative and peace talks between the Israel and Palestinians over the years, with the goal of achieving a peaceful resolution to the conflict and the establishment of the two-state solution.
Refers to the warfare that is taking place in Palestine, we can see there are various forms of Israeli oppression on the Palestinian people that have been carried out, including seizures of lands, forcible transfer, unlawful attacks and killings. This has not just happened recently, but has continued for 75 years until now. So the question is, isn't there any humanitarian law to protect these people, or any international regulations to condemn the actions of Israeli forces towards the Palestinians? So to answer that, in this video, I will be explaining on the laws of war in governing armed conflict and military occupation involving Israel and Palestinian armed groups. International humanitarian law, or the laws of war, has existed in some form for thousands of years, but the modern version of it is set out in the Geneva Conventions 1949 alongside other treaties and customary international law. It binds states, including Israel, as well as non-state armed groups that are involved in conflict, including Hamas and Islamic Jihad, even though they cannot formally ratify the treaties. Originally, Israel has not ratified certain protocols in the conventions covering areas such as collective punishments, but the US and other countries regard these provisions as having entered customary international law and therefore binding on all states. All parties involved in a war are required by international humanitarian law to maintain the distinction between combatants and civilians at all times. Parties are permitted to strike combatants and military objectives, but never civilians or civilian-related objects. This body of law also governs occupation, which occurs when a state has effective control without consent over territory which it has no sovereign title. United States, France, and England do not recognize Palestine as a sovereign state. Thus, in this case, being a state with no sovereignty as claimed by the state countries, Palestine is protected by IHL, whereby it prevents Israel from gaining authority over Palestine regardless of how many claims it makes regarding the annexations. In regard to the Palestine-Israel conflict, it is concerning that Israel authorities continue to commit settlements in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, to be occupied with the Jews. Since 1967, they have stolen the Palestinians' land and territory to establish their so-called country illegally. Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention states that the occupying power shall not deport or transfer members of its own civilian population into the territory it occupies, meaning that it is forbidden for the occupying power to seize the land in the occupied territory for the purpose of establishing settlements for its nationals. Israel should therefore be held accountable for the crime committed, as it is with no doubt the largest offender in this case. Moreover, recently, on Sunday, 9 of October, quoted from news18.com, it was reported that Israeli authorities announced that they would cut off the supply of electricity, fuels and goods to Gaza. This decision was taken by the country's security cabinet, which informed that the Israeli forces have begun the offensive phase to restore the security of their citizens. According to Article 55 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, the occupying force is responsible for ensuring that the populace is treated humanely and for meeting their basic requirements such as food and healthcare. Under the Fourth Geneva Convention, Israel must ensure Palestinians access to drinking water, water for personal hygiene and sanitation. However, the Israeli authorities seems has failed as the occupying power to maintain the basic needs of the Palestinians due to the complete siege being imposed on the Gaza Strip. The Palestinians are left with no water, no food, no electricity, no gas and other basic needs. This is clearly an infringement of human rights and a violation against the laws of war by Israel. Israel really deserves to be dragged to the International Criminal Court (ICC) for all the atrocities committed. Next, Article 5 of the Rome Statute construed that the ICC has jurisdiction in accordance with the crime of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. So, even though Israel is not a member of the ICC, but action can still be imposed against them. Moreover, in March 2021, the ICC decided to have jurisdiction over the Palestinian territories occupied by Israel, thus opening the way for the ICC to investigate war crimes committed. Despite all that, the Israeli authorities are still freely violating the rights of the Palestinians. Why is this happening? Taken from Tun Dr. Mahathir's speech at the 74th sessions of the United Nations, he described Israel as now freely to violate international law because there are countries that defend them. From here, we can see countries that have great power play a role in easing the conflict between Palestine and Israel. All nations that still uphold the values of justice and rule of law need to give cooperation and support to the Palestinian people. It's about time to end the oppression and free Palestine.
We must wonder, are all of Israel's actions against Palestine illegal under international law? Israel murders Palestinians, bombing school and hospital. Isn't there a legislation that prohibits such behavior? Yes, there are laws. A country that declares wars or goes to a war with another country is required to abide by a quite number of regulations and law. However, during the recent conflict between Palestine and Israel, Israel has infringed on a number of regulations and violated international law. One of it is the use of white phosphorus. There is video evidence that the dangerous chemical was fired at 2 locations along the Israel-Lebanon border and above the Gaza City port. When white phosphorus is abused in densely populated urban areas, it can burn down houses and injure civilians severely. There is Convention on Conventional Weapons (CCW). The purpose of the CCW is to prohibit or limit the use of defined types of weapons that are believed to cause unnecessary or unreasonable suffering to combatants or to indiscriminately affect civilians. In inhabited area, attacks with incendiary weapons delivered by air are prohibited under Protocol 3 of the Convention on Conventional Weapons (CCW). The use of white phosphorus weaponry in populated area not only violates international laws but also puts innocent life in danger. This also proves that Israel is in violations of the regulation and infringing the law. The next heartbreaking scenario that demonstrates Israel's violations of another international law is the life-threatening hospital strike. Al-Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza was bombed. Israel bombed Al-Ahli Hospital on October 17, 2023. The explosion killed hundreds of Palestinians and injured many others. Over 500 people were killed in this catastrophe. Israel violated the 4th Geneva Convention by bombing the Al-Ahli Hospital. A number of articles in the 4th Geneva Convention specifically discuss the significance of medical support. According to Article 14, hospital and safety zones must be established for groups such as the injured, sick, and pregnant women. Next, in line with Article 18, civilian hospitals and their workers must be protected. There is also an article that clearly states medical units shall be respected and protected at all times and shall not be the object of attack. By bombing the hospital Al-Ahli in Gaza, Israel violated the law.
Why is the Palestine Armed Forces referred to as a terrorist organization? In 1949, after the United Nations made Israel its 59th member, Israel has asserted its right to the Palestinian territory based on international law. And consequently, Israel consistently labeled any armed resistance by Palestinians as acts of terrorism and responded with the need for the counter-terrorism. And the PLO, which is the main representative of the Palestinian people in 1974, was initially labeled a terrorist organization by Israel in 1964 due to its military actions. However, the PLO later shifted to a peaceful approach for self-determination. And when Hamas, the Islamic resistance movement, won the election as the representative government of the people of Palestine, Hamas, like many other Palestinian liberation groups, was labeled as a terrorist organization by Israel, and because of its persistent use of military methods. And the international community made the decision to ignore Hamas' position and reject peace discussion. Then the Quartet and Israel made the decision to stop providing humanitarian help to the Palestinians and impose economic sanctions on the newly elected government on the belief that the aid will be used to fund Hamas for terrorism act. And as a result, legal restrictions were placed on the entry of aid, which made it more difficult to assist the Palestinians that had been suffering from the conflict. And while Palestine has gained non-member state status at the UN and joined the ICC, their quest for self-determination remains unfulfilled. The Palestinian struggle for self-determination is yet to be realized with the continuous presence of the Israel on its territory, and the Hamas military operation is still considered as a terrorist act because the organization was designated as a terrorist organization by Israel and was used to justify the harsh outcome committed against the Palestinians. And undoubtedly, it is difficult for non-state armed groups to gain recognition for their right of self-determination since they have been labeled as terrorist organization, and because there is no universal terrorism definitions, countries can use this designation to enforce their own terrorism laws and often to restrain movement in the name of counter-terrorism.
In conclusions, why do international organizations avoid helping Palestinians despite witnessing there are massacres and inhumanity? In our opinion, there are no action done because some countries prefer to protect their diplomatic connection with other countries for the benefit of their economies. They also hesitate from interfering between the two countries because Palestine doesn't have a strong government and sovereignty. Recognition by other states is not a strict rule in international law for acknowledging statehood. However, recognition can be both a practical and a political factor in determining a state's global status. In order to obtain sovereignty, a state must meet 4 fundamental requirements, which are must possess territory, government, population, and capacity to enter into relation with other states. On the other hand, if an international organization step in to help, there may be another occurrence of a more serious incident such as genocide in Rwanda involving the cruel killing. That's all from us. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.